The old diner smelled of grease and history, but for one black veteran, it would soon reek of humiliation. He had served his country with pride, yet here, in his hometown, he was nothing but a target for a racist restaurant owner. Laughter echoed as the man sneered, belittling him in front of everyone. But what the owner didn't know, what would soon make his stomach drop, was the veteran's connection to someone powerful. And when the truth came out, regret wouldn't even begin to describe what he felt. Who was the veteran's son, and why did it change everything? James Carter had spent his life in service, 2 tours overseas, countless sacrifices, and a chest full of medals. But none of that seemed to matter now. Retired, widowed, and craving a simple meal, he stepped into a small-town diner, hoping for nothing more than a warm plate and a quiet evening. The walls were lined with faded photos of local heroes. None of them looked like him. He was used to the stares, the hushed whispers, the tension that seemed to follow him in places like this. But today felt different. The owner, a burly man with a cocky smirk, barely glanced at him before barking, "We don't serve people like you here." A hush fell over the diner. James clenched his jaw. He had fought wars, faced enemies abroad, but now he was fighting for dignity in his own country. And the man standing before him had no idea just how badly he was about to regret those words. James Carter felt the heat rise in his chest, but he kept his expression calm. He had faced bullets, bombs, and battles. This was just another battlefield. The diner fell silent. A few customers shifted uncomfortably in their seats, but no one spoke up. The owner leaned against the counter, arms crossed, a smug grin plastered on his face. "I said, we don't serve people like you," he repeated, voice dripping with mockery. James took a slow breath. "People like me?" he asked, his voice steady. The owner chuckled, shaking his head. "Yeah, people like you. You can take that uniform, those medals. Doesn't change a thing. You still don't belong here." A few snickers echoed from a nearby table. James glanced at them. Young men, laughing at his expense. He had risked his life so they could sit here, eating freely, without fear. And yet, they saw him as nothing. He turned to leave, refusing to give them the reaction they wanted. But as he reached for the door, a sharp voice cut through the air. "That's right. Walk away." The owner's voice was louder now, bolder. He wanted a show. "You people always think you deserve respect, but all you do is take. This country gives you everything and you still complain." James stopped. His fingers curled into a fist at his side. Not because of the words, but because of the laughter that followed. Because no one stood up. No one stopped it. He had fought wars, bled for this country, lost friends in the name of freedom. And yet, here he was, still fighting, just to be seen as a man. A woman near the counter hesitated before finally speaking. "Maybe you should just let him eat," she mumbled. The owner scoffed. "And lose business? Not a chance." James exhaled slowly. He could let it go. Walk away, like he had done so many times before. But then the bell above the diner door jingled. A tall figure stepped inside, scanning the room. His broad shoulders, his commanding presence. He was someone used to authority. And when his eyes landed on James, they widened in shock. The room was about to learn exactly who James Carter was, and more importantly, who his son was. The tall figure stepped forward, his military boots thudding against the diner's tile floor. The room tensed as customers exchanged uncertain glances. The racist owner, still smirking, folded his arms. "Sorry, pal, we don't serve his kind here." Silence. Then, a slow, deliberate response. "His kind?" The owner scoffed. "Yeah, you know, troublemakers, freeloaders, always playing the victim." He chuckled, but the laughter died the second the man stepped closer, the gleam of his polished badge catching the light. "Major Daniel Carter, U.S. Army, James's son." The realization hit the owner like a gut punch. The cocky grin vanished as his eyes darted to the name stitched on Daniel's uniform. His throat bobbed in a nervous swallow. "Sir, But Daniel wasn't interested in excuses. His gaze swept across the room, at the stunned patrons, the ones who had sat in silence, letting this happen. Then, back to the man who had humiliated his father. "This man right here?" Daniel said, voice steady but firm. "He's a decorated war hero. He's bled for this country. While you were flipping burgers, he was dodging bullets so people like you could sleep safe at night." The diner felt suffocatingly quiet now. The owner shifted uncomfortably. I didn't know." Daniel took a step closer. "That's the problem. You never know. You judge first. Humiliate first. You think a uniform earns respect? Number character does. And today, you showed exactly what kind of man you are." The owner's face burned with shame, but it was too late. Customers pulled out their phones. Someone whispered, "This is going viral." Daniel turned to his father. "Come on, Dad. You deserve better than this." And as James walked out, head high, the owner finally realized he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. The next morning, the diner was all over the news. Social media exploded with outrage. The video of Major Daniel Carter confronting the racist owner had gone viral, shared by thousands, sparking a nationwide conversation. Some called for a boycott. Others demanded the owner apologize. But for James Carter, this wasn't about revenge. He had fought battles overseas, but this was the fight that never ended. The battle for dignity, for respect, for the simple right to exist without humiliation. And the saddest part? This wasn't an isolated incident. It never was. A week later, the diner's doors were locked. The backlash had been swift, but James knew that shutting down one restaurant wouldn't erase the deep-rooted prejudice woven into everyday life. As he sat on his porch, watching the sunset, his son beside him, he sighed. "They saw it this time," James murmured. "But how many times has it happened when no one was watching?" Daniel nodded solemnly. "Too many, Dad. Too many." This wasn't just his story. It was the story of countless others who had faced the same hatred in silence. And it begged the question, how many more will it take before real change happens?